There are moments in every human life when the ordinary world feels like a costume that doesn't quite fit. You might have felt it as a child, sitting in a classroom while everyone else seemed to understand the unspoken rules, the social rhythms, the easy laughter. You were there, but not entirely. Present, but observing. It wasn't that you felt superior. It was stranger than that. You felt like you were watching a play you hadn't been given a script for, and everyone else had memorized their lines before birth. This sensation, this quiet estrangement, is not evidence of literal chosenness or spiritual superiority. It is a first stirring of what depth psychologists call individuation, the soul's call toward its own unique becoming, a call that is universal in potential but always personal in expression. The ancient mystery traditions understood this. They built their initiations around it. In Egypt, Greece, Persia, and beyond, the mysteries were not about elevating a chosen few above the masses. They were about recognizing that certain psychological patterns, certain inner orientations, certain sensitivities appear across all cultures and all times. The initiate was not better than others. The initiate was simply awake to a dimension of existence that most people, comfortable in collective dream, had no reason to notice. You were not born into a literal bloodline of the enlightened. You were born into human condition, which contains within it the seed of awakening, a seed that most never water, not because they cannot, but because they never feel the drought. From the beginning, you noticed too much. Other children played without question. You questioned why you played. You saw the sadness in your mother's eyes when she smiled. You felt the tension in rooms before words were spoken. You knew when people were lying, not because you were taught discernment, but because something in you registered the discord between what was said and what was true. Adults called you sensitive. They meant it as a criticism, a flaw to be corrected. But sensitivity is not weakness. It is an instrument, a finely tuned receptor that picks up frequencies others are insulated against. The problem was never your sensitivity. The problem was that you were sensitive in a world that had agreed to be numb, and no one told you that your way of perceiving was valid. So you learned to doubt yourself. You learned to think something was wrong with you, and that doubt became the first layer of your initiation. Loneliness was your first teacher, not the loneliness of being physically alone, though you may have spent much time in solitude. It was a loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling unreachable, untranslatable, like a radio signal broadcast on a frequency no one else was tuned to. You tried to fit in. You mimicked the interests, the language, the concerns of those around you. You laughed at jokes you didn't find funny. You pretended to care about things that felt hollow. And for a while, this worked. You passed. But the cost was a creeping sense of self-betrayal, a feeling that you were trading your soul for acceptance. And the price was too high. So you withdrew, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. You needed silence. You needed space. You needed to stop performing and start listening to what was true inside you, even if that truth isolated you further. In the old myths, the hero always begins in isolation. Moses in the desert, Buddha under the Bodhi tree, Jesus in the wilderness. These are not historical facts, but psychological maps. They describe what happens when the soul can no longer tolerate the false agreement of the collective and must go into the unknown to find what is real. Your isolation was not a punishment. It was a chrysalis. It was a necessary condition for transformation. And though it felt like exile, it was actually the beginning of your return, not to the world as it is, but to yourself as you are. But isolation brings its own dangers. When you are alone with your thoughts for too long, when you are cut off from the grounding presence of others, the mind can become a labyrinth. You start to create stories about why you are the way you are. You start to wonder if maybe you are special, if maybe you were sent here for a reason, if maybe all this suffering means something grand and destined. This is a seduction of the chosen one fantasy, and it is one of the most dangerous traps on the path, because it takes a real psychological experience, the experience of individuation, of awakening, of differentiation, and it twists it into ego inflation. It turns a journey inward into a story about being better than others, and the moment that happens, you are lost. You are no longer seeking truth. You are seeking validation. You are no longer becoming yourself. You are becoming a character in a fantasy that protects you from the humility and uncertainty that real growth demands. The truth is harder and more beautiful than the fantasy. You are not chosen in the sense that you were handpicked by a cosmic force to save the world or fulfill a grand destiny. You are chosen only in the sense that you have chosen, consciously or unconsciously, to pay attention to dimensions of reality that most people ignore. You have chosen to feel rather than numb. You have chosen to question rather than accept. You have chosen to sit with discomfort rather than distract yourself into oblivion. And these choices, whether made deliberately or simply as expressions of your nature, have set you on a different path. Not a higher path, not a better path, a different path. One that requires more courage, more honesty, more willingness to be misunderstood, because it does not follow the well-worn grooves of convention. If you stayed with this so far, if something in these words feels familiar, perhaps this space is for you. There is no obligation, no urgency, but if you feel drawn to continue this exploration, you are welcome here. There comes a moment on this path when you must face the fire, not a literal fire, but the fire of inner conflict, the fire of transformation that burns away everything false. In alchemy, this is called an nigredo, the blackening, the stage where all the old structures dissolve and you're left with nothing but raw, undifferentiated chaos. Psychologically, this is the dark night of the soul, the period where everything you thought you knew about yourself, about the world, about meaning and purpose, collapses. You lose your faith. You lose your direction. You lose the comforting narratives that held your identity together. And in that loss, you are forced to confront what remains. This is where most people turn back. This is where the call to adventure becomes too frightening, and the return to the ordinary world, however painful, seems safer than continuing into the unknown. But you did not turn back. Whether by grace or stubbornness, by courage or lack of alternatives, you kept going. And in the fire, you began to see what was real. You saw that most of what you've been taught was designed to make you manageable, not free. You saw that the authorities you had trusted, the institutions, the traditions, the voices of certainty, were often just as lost as you, only less willing to admit it. You saw that morality was not a fixed code handed down from on high, but a living, breathing struggle to discern what is right in each moment, a struggle that requires your full presence and honesty. And you saw that the darkness you feared, the shadow you tried to ignore, was not your enemy. It was part of you. It was a disowned, rejected, exiled aspect of your own psyche, waiting to be integrated, not destroyed. This is the deepest teaching of the ancient mysteries, the teaching that has been hidden not because it is secret, but because it is so simple and so difficult that most people cannot bear it. You are not fighting against evil forces outside yourself. You are learning to recognize and integrate the forces within yourself. The demons are not literal entities. They are fragmented parts of your own consciousness, split off by trauma, by shame, by fear, by the refusal to accept your full humanity. And the work of the soul is not to conquer these demons, but to sit with them, to listen to them, to understand what they are trying to protect you from, and to bring them back into the wholeness of your being. In Jungian psychology, this is called shadow work. In the mystical traditions, it is the confrontation with the dweller on the threshold. In mythology, it is a descent into the underworld. Every tradition has a name for it because every tradition recognizes that this is the essential task of human maturation. And it is a task that most people avoid their entire lives because it requires you to stop blaming others, to stop waiting for rescue, to stop believing that you are a victim of circumstances beyond your control. It requires you to take full responsibility for your inner life, for your reactions, for your patterns, for the ways you betrayed yourself and others. And that responsibility is terrifying because it means you can no longer hide behind the stories of your woundedness. You must stand in your power, even when you do not feel powerful. You must choose your path, even when you do not know where it leads. Ethics becomes the crucible, not the ethics of rule following, but the ethics of moment-to-moment discernment. You begin to realize that every action, every word, every thought is a choice that shapes the reality you inhabit. You begin to see that integrity is not about being perfect, but about being coherent, about aligning your inner truth with your outer expression as fully as possible. You stumble, you fail, you hurt people you care about, you make mistakes you cannot undo, and in those failures, you learn something more valuable than success. You learn humility. You learn that you are not the hero of a cosmic drama, but a fallible human being trying to navigate an impossibly complex existence with limited information and countless blind spots. And that humility, that groundedness, is what keeps you from the inflation that destroys so many who walk this path. There's a loneliness that comes with this level of honesty. When you stop pretending, when you stop performing, when you stop agreeing to the collective lies, you will lose people, not because you're rejecting them, but because your presence becomes a mirror, and most people do not want to see their own reflection. They will call you negative. They will say you have changed. They will accuse you of thinking you are better than them. And the irony is that you are trying to do the opposite. You are trying to be more honest, more vulnerable, more real. But honesty is threatening in a world built on pretense, and vulnerability is dangerous in a culture armored against feeling. So you will walk alone for stretches of this journey. And that is okay, because the solitude is no longer exile. It is sanctuary. It is the space where you can hear your own voice without the static of external expectations. And then, if you are fortunate, you begin to find the others. Not many, maybe only a handful in a lifetime, but you recognize them instantly. There's a resonance, a sense of meeting someone who speaks your language, who has walked through similar fire and emerged with similar scars and similar insights. These connections are rare and precious. They are not based on shared interests or social proximity. They are based on shared depth, shared willingness to be real, shared commitment to the path of truth over the path of comfort. And in these connections, you realize that you were never truly alone. You were simply early. You were simply waiting for the others to arrive. And they were waiting for you. This is where the metaphor of the hidden family begins to make sense, not as a literal bloodline, but as a spiritual kinship, a lineage of seekers and questioners and truth-tellers that stretches back through history and across cultures. You belong to the lineage of Socrates, who questioned until they killed him. You belong to the lineage of the mystics who spoke of unity and were called heretics. You belong to the lineage of the artists and poets and philosophers who saw beauty and meaning in a world determined to be ugly and meaningless. You belong to the lineage of everyone who ever chose honesty over acceptance, who ever chose growth over comfort, who ever chose to become themselves rather than what they were told to be. This is your family, not by blood, but by spirit, not by destiny, but by choice. Around the midpoint of any real journey, there's a temptation to stop, to believe you have arrived, to settle into a new identity that feels more authentic than the old one, but is still just another mask. You might call yourself awakened, enlightened, a truth seeker, a spiritual warrior. And these labels might feel good. They might give you a sense of belonging, of purpose, of identity. But they are still labels. They are still ways of fixing yourself into a concept, of making yourself knowable and therefore manageable. And the deepest work is to go beyond all labels, to rest in the unknown, to be comfortable with not knowing who or what you are, to let yourself be a living question rather than a fixed answer. If this resonates, if you find yourself returning to these reflections, consider staying. This is a space for those who are willing to sit with uncertainty and still choose to grow. You are welcome to walk this path alongside others who understand. The integration phase is the longest and least dramatic part of the journey. There are no more lightning bolts of revelation. There are no more ecstatic experiences of unity. There's only the slow, patient work of living what you have learned, of embodying the insights, of translating the mystical into the mundane. You learn to be kind when you do not feel like it. You learn to be patient when everything in you wants to force an outcome. You learn to be present when presence is boring or uncomfortable. You learn to hold your boundaries without aggression. You learn to give without losing yourself. You learn to receive without grasping. These are not glamorous lessons. They do not make for good social media posts. But they are the substance of a life well lived, the evidence that the journey was real and not just another escape from reality. You begin to see that the point was never to become special. The point was to become whole. And wholeness includes everything. It includes your light and your shadow, your strength and your weakness, your wisdom and your foolishness. It includes your loneliness and your connection, your certainty and your doubt, your hope and your despair. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is integration. It is a capacity to hold all your contradictions without fragmenting, to be both human and divine, both limited and infinite, both individual and universal. And this capacity is not something you achieve once and for all. It is something you practice moment by moment for the rest of your life. The metaphor being hidden for 2,000 years is a powerful one, and like all powerful metaphors, it contains a deep truth wrapped in symbolic language. The truth is not that there's a literal secret society or hidden bloodline that has been waiting for you to discover it. The truth is that there are dimensions of human consciousness, dimensions of reality, dimensions of meaning and purpose that have been suppressed, marginalized, ridiculed, and ignored by the dominant culture for millennia. These dimensions have been kept alive by small communities of seekers, by underground traditions, by artists and mystics, and rebels who refuse to let the flame go out. And when you awaken to these dimensions, when you begin to feel and see and understand what most people are taught to ignore, you're joining that lineage. You are becoming part of that hidden stream. Not because you were chosen by external forces, but because you chose, consciously or unconsciously, to pay attention. In many spiritual traditions, there's a teaching about the remnant, the small number who carry the light through dark ages, who preserve the wisdom when the world is not ready to hear it, who wait patiently for the moment when consciousness can shift and the hidden can become revealed. This is not about elitism. This is about function. In any ecosystem, in any system, there are elements that stabilize, that hold the pattern, that remember the wholeness when everything else is fragmenting. You may be one of those elements. Not because you are better, but because your sensitivity, your awareness, your refusal to accept the surface explanations has made you a carrier of something essential. And the responsibility that comes with that is not to proclaim yourself special, but to live with integrity, to embody the truth you have glimpsed, to be a quiet presence of sanity in a world that often feels insane. There are times when the weight of this responsibility feels unbearable. You look around and see the suffering, the ignorance, the cruelty, the waste, and you want to scream, to shake people awake, to force them to see what you see. But you cannot wake someone who is pretending to sleep. You cannot give someone an experience they are not ready for. And your frustration, your anger, your despair are signs that you are still attached to outcomes, still try to control what is not yours to control. The deeper work is to let go of the need to save anyone, including yourself. The deeper work is to trust that each person's path is their own, that each soul is on its own journey, and that your role is not to rescue or convert, but simply to be as awake and as kind and as honest as you can be, and to trust that your presence, your example, your energy will touch those who are ready to be touched. This does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you stop caring or stop acting. It means you act from a different place. You act from wholeness rather than woundedness, from love rather than fear, from clarity rather than compulsion. You act because it is right, because it is aligned with your values, because it is an expression of who you are, not because you are trying to prove something or fix something or earn something. And this shift from doing to being, from striving to allowing, is one of the most profound transformations you will undergo. It is the shift from a hero's journey to the sage's stillness, from the warrior's battle to the mystic surrender. In the old alchemical texts, there's a phrase that appears again and again, as above, so below. It means that the macrocosm and the microcosm are reflections of each other, that the patterns in the cosmos are the same as the patterns in the soul, that the work you do on yourself is not separate from the work of the universe. When you heal a wound in your own psyche, you are healing that wound in the collective. When you integrate a shadow aspect of yourself, you are shifting the collective shadow. When you choose love over fear, truth over comfort, presence over distraction, you are not just changing your own life. You are changing the field, the morphic resonance, the subtle web of consciousness that connects all beings. This is not magic. This is physics. This is a recognition that we are not isolated atoms, but nodes in a vast network, and every shift in one node sends ripples through the whole. So your work matters. Not because you are special, but because you are part of the whole, and the whole is only as conscious as its parts. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be enlightened. You do not need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep showing up, keep being honest, keep doing the work, keep choosing awareness over automaticity. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. There will be moments of doubt, moments when you wonder if any of this is real, if you've been deluding yourself, if the loneliness and the struggle and the otherness have all been for nothing. In those moments, do not try to convince yourself of anything. Do not reach for beliefs or affirmations or spiritual bypasses. Just sit with the doubt. Let it be there. Feel it fully, and notice that even in the doubt, even in the emptiness, even in the not knowing, you are still here. You are still aware. You are still breathing. And that awareness, that presence, that simple fact of being is a ground that does not shift, the foundation that remains even when everything else falls away. The ancient ones knew this. The true mystery teachings beneath all the ritual and symbolism and hierarchy were pointing to this one simple truth. You are not what you think you are. You are not your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your identity, your story. You are the awareness in which all of those things arise and pass away. You are the space, the openness, the consciousness itself. And that consciousness is not personal. It is not yours. It is the one consciousness looking through billions of eyes, experiencing itself in infinite forms, playing a game of separation so that it can know the ecstasy of reunion. This is not a belief. This is not a philosophy. This is a direct recognition that becomes available when you stop trying to grasp it and simply rest in what is. And when you rest there, when you touch that dimension even for a moment, everything changes and nothing changes. The world is still the world. Suffering is still suffering. Injustice is still injustice. But your relationship to it all shifts. You're no longer overwhelmed by it, because you're no longer identified as a separate self trying to survive in a hostile universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself, and everything that happens is part of the play, part of the exploration, part of the vast creative experiment of consciousness knowing itself. This does not make you indifferent. If anything, it makes you more compassionate, because you see that everyone, no matter how lost or cruel or confused, is the same consciousness, just more deeply asleep, more deeply caught in the dream of separation. Your role, if you can call it that, is simply to be a reminder, not by preaching or teaching or trying to convince anyone of anything, but by being present, by being real, by being unapologetically yourself, by refusing to participate in the collective trance. When people are around you, even if they cannot articulate it, they feel something different. They feel permission to be real. They feel a safety to question. They feel a reminder that there is more to life than the scripts they have been handed. And that is the greatest gift you can give. Not because you are superior or enlightened, but because you have done the work to clear enough of your own condition that the light can shine through a little more clearly. As we come toward the end of this exploration, toward the integration of all that has been said, remember that none of this makes you chosen in the way the ego wants to be chosen. You are not destined for fame or recognition or validation. You are not guaranteed an easy path or a happy ending. You are not exempt from suffering or failure or doubt. You are simply awake, or awakening, to dimensions of reality that require your attention and your participation. And that awakening is both a gift and a responsibility. It is a gift because it allows you to live with more depth, more meaning, more authenticity. It is a responsibility because it calls you to a higher standard of integrity, honesty, and compassion, not toward others, but toward yourself. If you have found a home in this reflection, if you sense that this journey is also your own, then perhaps you belong here. This is a place for continued exploration, for those willing to walk the path with open eyes and humble hearts. You are invited to stay. The real family that has been hidden is not a bloodline. It is a state of consciousness. It is the awareness that we are all connected, all expressions of the same source, all walking each other home. And when you recognize that, when you feel that, when you live from that, you are no longer searching for your tribe. You are your tribe. You are the lineage. You are the carrier of the flame. Not because you were chosen, but because you choose every day, every moment, to remember what is true, to act from that truth, to be a presence of love and awareness in a world that desperately needs both. So walk gently, speak truthfully, love fiercely, forgive endlessly, question everything, hold nothing, be no one. And in that emptiness, in that openness, in that willingness to be nothing, You become everything. You become the very thing you have been searching for. You become home. And the journey, which seems so long and so arduous, reveals itself to be a circle, a return to what you always were, what you could never not be, the eternal witness, the silent presence, the unconditional awareness that holds all things in compassionate embrace. This is not the end. This is not even the beginning. This is the endless middle, the eternal now, the space between breaths where all transformation happens. Stay here, rest here, be here, and know that you are exactly where you need to be, not because of destiny, but because of choice, your choice, made again and again, to be awake, to be real, to be fully, courageously, vulnerably human. That is the only chosenness that matters. That is the only family worth finding. And it has been with you, hidden in plain sight, waiting patiently for you to stop searching and simply see.